Would you dare to step onto these death trains where the line between life and death is just a matter of centimetres? Brace yourself to be suffocated by the sight of thousands of people clinging to roofs and windows. Or watch your heart stop as a massive iron beast barrels right through crowded local markets. From precarious tracks clinging to sheer cliffs over deep abysses to endlessly long ore trains blasting through desert sandstorms, danger lurks at every single turn. These are insane journeys that defy all laws of physics, where the bone-chilling cold of high peaks or the scorching heat of hostile lands could swallow you whole at any moment. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready, because the world's most breathtaking train ride officially departs right now. Bishwa Ijtama Special Train, Bangladesh. Get ready to see a train that no longer looks like a machine, but like a giant living creature, with people clinging to the windows, the roof, and even the front engine. The most tense moment comes when it passes under a low bridge and the people sitting high above must all bend down at the same second to avoid being hit. From above, the whole train looks like a huge caterpillar crawling across wetlands and green fields, while the steel body under it almost disappears. This service has run since the 1960s to carry pilgrims to Bishwa Ijtama, the second largest religious gathering in the world, which draws millions of people. Because thousands of bodies are pressed close together in winter. Body heat can raise the temperature on and inside the train by about 9 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit, turning the ride into a hot and choking mass of people. But the strangest part is that in the middle of all that dangerous overcrowding, many faces still look calm, as if faith itself is holding the whole train together. Make Klong Railway Market, Thailand. Welcome to a place where the market and the railway seem stuck together because the stalls are set up right on top of the old sleepers. Every day, 8 trains pass through the heart of the market, yet many diners still keep eating calmly while the train slides by only a few handspans behind their backs. Some trays of vegetables, fish, and fruit sit so low that the underside of the train passes only a few inches above them, Yet the sellers know the space so well that almost nothing gets crushed. This market had already existed since the late 19th century, so when the railway arrived in 1905, the people did not leave but learned how to live with the train. Each time the horn sounds, umbrellas and awnings fold down together, the stalls are pulled back, and in only about 30 seconds, the track is completely clear. Standing close as the train passes, you can even smell engine oil mixing with ripe fruit and fresh seafood, which is what makes this place so hard to forget. Hanoi Train Street, Vietnam. In the middle of the capital, there is a street where, just a few minutes before the train arrives, people are still drinking coffee, talking, and living as calmly as in any other neighbourhood. It is exactly the contrast between old yellow walls, small cafes, flower pots, and rusty rails that gives this place its strange beauty, feeling both warm and tightly tense at the same time. Then the moment local people shout a warning or give a signal, the whole street almost disappears in about 60 seconds, and right after the last car passes, everything returns to normal again. This railway is more than 120 years old and runs between old houses with some gaps of only about 12 to 20 inches from the train to the wall, close enough to send a chill through anyone standing there. When the train rushes through, the ground shakes. The noise can reach about 110 to 120 decibels, and the blast of air can even throw light objects aside, turning a few seconds into real tension. That is why this place is famous not only for danger, but also because it is one of the rare places where people still live calmly beside risk every single day. Bamboo train, Cambodia. With no roof and no safety belt, this thin bamboo machine throws you into a ride where the only things holding you in place are your own hands and gravity. Sitting low on the bamboo platform, you feel hot wind, loose gravel, and the engine's harsh sound hitting your body, while rice fields, bushes, and old iron bridges flash past in front of you. The wildest moment comes when two trains meet on the same track, because the lighter one must take apart its whole platform, engine, and wheels in less than 2 minutes to let the other pass. Born in the 1980s after war had destroyed the main railway system, It was nothing more than a platform about 13 feet long set on two iron wheel axles taken from scrap. Pushed by a small engine of only about 6 horsepower, it can still reach about 31 miles per hour on old bent tracks, creating a feeling that is both absurd and frightening. And from that poverty, the bamboo train became one of Cambodia's most unusual symbols, where people turned the leftovers of war into a bold way to survive. Liziba Station, China. In Chongqing, where steep hills make the city feel stacked in three-dimensional layers and buildable land is running out, people were forced to find solutions that few other cities would even try. The turning point came in 1998 when the plan for Line 2 and an apartment project collided at the exact same spot. So instead of removing one of them, engineers chose to merge both into a single design. Because the train had to pass through a place where people were living, the system was built to stay very quiet, with air-filled rubber tyres and special shock control, so the noise is only as loud as a dishwasher. That is why, from the street below, the sight of a train rushing through the air and then diving into the middle of a 19-storey building feels like a science fiction scene dropped into real life. Even more surprising, the station and the tracks take over the 6th to the 8th floor, while the levels above and below still remain normal homes where people live their daily lives. Liziba is not only an urban wonder, but also proof that when an obstacle is too large to go around, people can still calmly create a way through it. Gotthard Base Tunnel, Switzerland. Like a straight cut through the heart of the Alps, this tunnel is 35 miles long and holds the title of the longest and deepest railway tunnel in the world. Inside are 2 parallel tubes and a total excavated network of 94 miles where giant boring machines once met with an error of only 8 millimeters. Deeper inside, the natural rock temperature can reach 115 degrees Fahrenheit, so huge ventilation and cooling systems must keep working to stop the tunnel from becoming a sealed furnace. To protect passengers inside the mountain, a side passage connects the 2 main tubes about every 1,066 feet, creating hidden escape routes in the rock. The boring machines that opened the way for this project were up to 1,312 feet long and weighed thousands of tons, like steel monsters eating through ancient granite. Lake Berlinskoye Salt Train, Russia. In the middle of a lake, as pink as melted candy, an old train appears as if it were running across the sea in a fairy tale. When the water is calm, you can even walk on the hidden rails and feel the train floating across a giant mirror that seems to swallow the sky. Around it, dark train cars stand beside bright white salt shores, creating a strange view that looks like snow left in the middle of summer. This lake holds about 2 pounds of salt in every gallon of water, almost like the Dead Sea. So almost no fish can survive here, and in hot months the surface bursts into bright pink. Because the lake is only about 3 feet deep, the rails stay under the water and special engines can glide into the lake to collect the salt crust from the bottom. Since the middle of the 20th century, this swimming train has kept carrying tens of thousands of tons of salt each year, turning a surreal image into a very real part of daily life. Riyadh Metro, Saudi Arabia. Instead of building piecemeal, this country took a big gamble by creating 6 train lines, 109 miles long simultaneously in a single phase. The interesting point is that the trains run completely automatically without drivers, allowing passengers to stand right at the nose of the train to enjoy the panoramic view. Stepping inside, you will be overwhelmed by polished granite floors and honeycomb domes that turn harsh sunlight into artistic lighting. To avoid the scorching heat, earth-eating monsters dug tunnels 98 feet deep to hide half of the system under the desert. The stations on the ground are not rigid but curve softly like moving golden sand dunes, completely without dead angles. to survive in the harsh nature. The trains are forced to be equipped with specialised track sweeping brushes to fight against the number one enemy, sandstorms. Landwasser Viaduct, Switzerland. In the middle of dark pine forest, this stone bridge appears like a slender curve, and the moment a red train glides onto it, the whole scene begins to look like a moving painting. In winter, snow covers the whole valley in white, while the red train stands out against grey stone and cold forest, making the landscape feel both quiet and strangely ghost-like. Shamsha. That feeling grows even stronger because the moment it leaves the windy open space, the train dives straight into a dark tunnel in the cliff, as if it has been swallowed in a second. Built from 1901 to 1902, the bridge rises about 213 feet, stands on 6 even stone arches, and after more than 120 years, its shape is still almost unchanged. Because the curve is so sharp, with a radius of only about 328 feet, people in the rear cars can see the front of the train seeming to hang above the deep gorge with almost no support in sight. That mix of height, curve, the red train, and the sudden jump into darkness is what makes Landwasser one of the most unforgettable railway sites in Europe. Daju Cliffside Train, China. Hanging on a sheer cliff, this one-of-a-kind train holds no more than 55 people for over an hour at a terrifying height of about 3,937 feet, enough to make anyone feel locked in the sky. Even so, the journey, exactly 8 miles long, still draws people, because in Eastern culture that number can suggest a promise of love that lasts a lifetime. But when the clouds roll in, the bright white train drives straight into a thick wall of fog, erasing the abyss below and turning the whole ride into a drifting white blur. That is why, once the train begins to move, this place feels like a harsher version of a glass bridge, forcing you to finish the ride and face your fear all the way to the end. Death Railway, Thailand and Myanmar. In the heart of Southeast Asia, a steel scar still clings to the mountainside where beauty and death stand side by side. This railway runs for about 258 miles through deep jungle to link Thailand and Myanmar, and people once said that every mile completed cost many human lives. On some parts, old wooden bridges still hold to the cliff, and whenever the wheels roll across them, the cracking sound in the forest wind feels both fragile and haunting. In less than 15 months during World War II, more than 100,000 prisoners and forced workers died from hunger, sickness, and exhaustion to build this line. When the train curves along the cliff, with rock on one side and a fast river just below the edge on the other, it looks as if it is hanging in the air. Death Railway is still beautiful today in the endless green of the jungle. But that beauty also reminds us that some sights come at a very heavy human cost. Mount Washington Cog Railway, United States. Once mocked as a mad idea as impossible as flying to the moon, this train truly pulls people straight into one of the harshest weather zones on Earth. Sitting inside, you can feel as if you are hanging in mid-air because the whole heavy train clings to the mountainside through a single rack running along the middle of the track. What makes it even more frightening is that much of the line stands on an open wooden trestle built so violent wind can blow through it instead of tearing the whole structure down. As the train climbs, green forest quickly gives way to bare rock, cold cloud and thick fog because the summit is covered by cloud or mist for about 300 days each year. So it was also here that wind above 231 miles per hour was recorded, which is why even this short 3-mile ride can feel like entering a climate zone almost too severe for people. And the 1929 accident, when a locomotive plunged off the line and killed one person, still stands as a chilling reminder that here, one small failure can let gravity become the final judge. Train to the Clouds, Argentina. This is one of the highest railways in the world, where steel tracks were lifted into the deep blue sky of the Andes. At that height, the sky looks unusually dark and clear, while the dry land below makes the whole journey feel as if it is moving along the edge of another planet. At its most famous point, the train crawls across a curved steel bridge about 207 feet high and more than 730 feet long, with almost nothing below but deep open space. The line climbs to about 13,845 feet, so the air becomes thin enough that many people feel a little dizzy, which is why the train carries medical support and backup oxygen. To climb the Andes, the train cannot go straight up, so it uses zigzags and loops, slowly holding to the mountainside as if it were finding its own way into the sky. That breathless height, clever climbing design, and the lonely beauty of the Andes are what make this journey so unforgettable. Curitiba Paranaguá Railway, Brazil? Once dismissed as a mad dream, this railway leaves the high mountains behind and carries you downward toward the sea on a journey where the landscape changes like turning pages. At times, the train slides past wet rock walls where waterfalls crash right beside the windows and thick jungle growth reaches out as if it wants to swallow the steel cars. As it moves across forest gorges filled with mist, it can feel less like riding on rails and more like flying low over the green surface of giant treetops. Built in 1885, the 68-mile line still winds through tropical forest and unstable ground without using any rack system to grip the mountain. The most tense part comes when it passes through 14 tunnels and then crawls across 41 iron bridges, with some sections seeming to be pinned straight into the cliff while pale, empty depth opens below. That mix of bold engineering, fierce mountain jungle, and the constant feeling of hanging between cloud, water, and abyss is what makes the Curitiba Paranaguá Railway one of the most unforgettable train journeys in the world. Arsenalna Metro Station, Ukraine. Lying 346 feet underground, this artificial abyss is deep enough to swallow the entire 305-foot Statue of Liberty without reaching the street above it. Passengers drift for nearly 5 minutes on steep escalators, long enough to read a book or even fall asleep while hanging inside the endless tunnel. Even more astonishingly, The main hall was created by casting a giant concrete structure at ground level and then slowly excavating the earth beneath it until the massive block sank into place by itself. Inside the marble arches, mechanical echoes roll endlessly through the station, yet the deep underground environment stays permanently cool, whether the surface above burns at 95 degrees Fahrenheit or freezes at -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Dim. Once the heavy steel trapdoors seal shut, the station transforms into a survival bunker where the pressure of the underground erases every difference between wealth, status, and ordinary human life. Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, United States. Leave modern comfort behind because this smoking machine pulls you back to a time when trains had to fight for survival against rock walls and deep abysses. As the cars curve along the cliff edge, many passengers feel as if the whole train is leaning out into empty space, which is why it moves at only about 18 miles per hour to reduce the danger. The most frightening moment comes when the train crawls across the deadly ledge, where just below the wheels there is a straight drop of about 394 feet, and even one glance down can tighten your chest. The line was built in 1882 to move silver and gold out of the mountains as fast as possible. So it was born not for sightseeing, but for journeys filled with industry and risk. Over 45 miles, the train passes through thick forests, slips through narrow, dark rock cuts, and then suddenly opens onto a bright, high plateau, as if the whole mountain range were changing its face in front of you. Even sparks from the engine are dangerous enough that a special vehicle must follow behind, only to put out the small fires that can start along the route. A VE high-speed rail network, Spain. Bearing the name of a free bird, this time machine tore through the wind with a record test speed of 251 miles per hour, faster than a professional race car. To conquer the second most rugged mountainous terrain in Europe, hundreds of miles of giant viaducts were built to keep the tracks perfectly flat. Wooden passengers will experience a thrill as sunlight flashes continuously like disco lights when the train rushes through a chain of mountain tunnels. Worthy of the old continent's crown, this rail network stretches nearly 2,500 miles, surpassing all neighbouring technological powerhouses. The landscape outside transforms magically, where millions of olive trees race past the window, creating a hypnotic silver-green ocean. The pinnacle of pride lies in the 100% refund commitment for any delay, affirming the absolute precision of time. Gotthard Base Tunnel, Switzerland. Dubbed the drill of the century, this 35-mile-long tunnel pierces the base of the Alps to become the longest traffic route on the planet. In reality, this is an intricate maze that, if stretched out, would extend up to 94 miles. The biggest challenge was not hard rock, but the natural temperature reaching 115 degrees Fahrenheit, turning this place into a giant kiln. So, now that heat is generated by the record depth of 7,546 feet, where the Earth's crust weighs down equivalent to 5 Empire State Towers stacked together. In the monotonous darkness, life is protected by bright yellow sliding doors appearing regularly every 1,066 feet. Thanks to the perfectly flat design, high-speed trains can tear through the wind here at 155 miles per hour as smoothly as flying over a plane. Pilatus Railway, Switzerland. It feels less like riding a train and more like being pulled by a red machine straight up a wall of rock, where the world outside is so steep that your eyes almost refuse to believe it. Sitting inside, you see turquoise water and silver grey cliffs dropping sharply below, and sometimes even a white sea of cloud drifts across your eye level as if you were hanging in the air. So, the strange part is that while the body of the train climbs at a fierce angle, the space inside still feels steady, making the whole ride seem more like an outdoor elevator than a mountain railway. Opened in 1889, Pilatus Railway still holds the world record as the steepest cog railway, with a maximum gradient of 48% on a line only about 3 miles long. To climb more than 5,250 feet in about half an hour without slipping, it uses the bold horizontal gear system created by Eduard Locher, a solution that still feels almost unmatched today. But because of the extreme slope and the danger of avalanches, This mechanical wonder runs only in season, which makes every ride feel brief and unforgettable. Stoßbahn, Switzerland. It feels less like stepping onto a train and more like entering a steel elevator that pulls your whole body straight off the ground and up a steep mountain wall in the Alps. The ride lasts only a few minutes at about 33 feet per second, then suddenly bursts out of three dark tunnels into a huge open world of mountain sky. When you look through the wide glass, the houses, trees, and even the slope below seem to lean sharply to one side, while your own body still feels steady, as if you were standing on flat ground. Opened in 2017, this line holds the world record as the steepest funicular, with its sharpest section reaching 110%, a slope that can leave first-time riders holding their breath. The most remarkable part is that its four round cabins turn with the slope. So even while the outside world tilts almost 50 degrees, the floor inside always stays level and calm. It took 14 years to plan and build on a limestone wall once reached only by skilled climbers, creating a machine that can now carry up to 1,500 people each hour high into the mountains. Gornegrat Railway, Switzerland. Riding this train feels like stepping onto an elevator, pulling you straight toward the sky, lifting you out of the green valley and into a world of snow and ice. In only about 33 minutes, the view changes fast from pine forest and cold meadows to bare rock, white snow, and sharp mountain wind, like a nature film playing at high speed. Near the top, at about 10,135 feet, the pyramid shape of the Matterhorn stands ahead, while below lies a glacier almost 8 miles long, resting like a giant white beast. Since 1898, this has remained the highest open-air railway in Europe, an idea that once seemed almost impossible for its time. At the summit, you can see 29 peaks higher than about 13,100 feet all around you, as if you were standing in the middle of a meeting of stone and ice giants. Thanks to its narrow track of only about 3 feet 3 inches, the train can hug the mountainside and climb steadily upward, which is what makes the whole ride feel so smooth and so remarkable. El Nares del Diablo, Ecuador. Clinging to the sheer cliffs of the Andes, this twisting line of steel looks like a direct challenge to death and gravity. The strangest part is that on the same mountainside you can see layers of track stacked like steel steps, making the whole train look as if it is crawling across a cliff. Each time you look down, the wheels seem to pass only a few handspans from the edge and the fast river below. Enough to make almost anyone feel their heart drop for a moment. Known as the hardest railway in the world, this early 20th century project took the lives of more than 4,000 workers through sickness, accidents, and brutal land. To descend nearly 1,640 feet on a slope that was far too steep, engineers built the track in a zigzag pattern, so the train moves into a dead end and then reverses to a lower level before going on. It is in that sudden backward movement between two giant mountain walls that passengers feel most clearly as if they are being pushed into endless empty space. Konkan Railway, India. From far away, the train looks like a tiny needle trying to pierce a giant white wall of water in the middle of the mountains. The moment it comes out of a dark tunnel, passengers suddenly face a wide and overwhelming view where rock, water, and deep space seem to rush straight into their eyes at once. Because the train must move very slowly while crossing the falls, water spray often lashes the windows, and people sitting near them can be soaked within minutes. This is the most famous part of the Konkan line, where the track cuts across the mighty Dudsaga Falls, which rises about 1,017 feet and stands among the most striking waterfalls in India. What makes it even more impressive is that the train still crosses on an old stone bridge from the colonial era, a structure that has survived countless flood seasons. And because this railway also had to force its way through countless bridges and tunnels in the forested mountains, that moment when the train slides past the wall of water has become a surreal image known around the world. Pamban Bridge, India. In the middle of the blue sea, this bridge looks like a thin line of steel daring to carry a train just above the water. From far away, it bends gently across the sea, and the train curling along that narrow strip with almost no side barriers looks both beautiful and frightening. When wind gusts reach about 93 miles per hour, the train can move at only about 6 miles per hour. So even a few minutes on the bridge feel like a test of nerves. Opened in 1914, the bridge is about 1 mile long with 143 spans, and its middle section can split and rise to let boats pass through. In the early morning, when fog hides both ends, the scream of wheels on the rails between the waves makes the ride feel as if it is rushing into endless empty space. After part of it was destroyed by a super cyclone in 1964 and rebuilt in only 45 days, Pamban still stands today as a stubborn legend in the middle of the ocean. Hindenburg Damm, Germany. Imagine a train pulling you straight out into the sea on a narrow stone line with nothing around you but water, wind, and a distant horizon. More than 100 trains still cross here every day, carrying thousands of passengers and vehicles, so this embankment is not only strange to look at, but also a lifeline that never stops. When the tide rises, seawater pushes close on both sides. The cars begin to shake a little, and it feels as if the wheels are cutting through water instead of running on rails. Opened in 1927. After 4 years of fighting mud and rough wind, Hindenburg Damm stretches about 7 miles like a lonely straight line linking the mainland to a distant island. The strange thing is that there is no road for cars anywhere on it, only a railway crossing the sea like a path made only for iron. That is why passing over it Feels like leaving the familiar world behind and entering an isolated land of water, wind, seabirds, and endless silence. Mauritania Iron Ore Train, Mauritania. Would you dare climb onto a steel monster about 8,200 feet long and let it drag you across the sands of the Sahara as if nothing waits ahead but wind and risk? The longer the ride goes on, the more iron dust sticks to your hair, skin, clothes, and bags until everything slowly turns black, while your eyes begin to burn if they are not fully covered. For nearly 20 hours, riders stay out in the open across a trip of about 435 miles, crossing giant dunes and lonely rock masses resting in endless, empty space. Since 1963, this line has remained the vital lifeline of Mauritania, carrying millions of tons of iron ore to the sea and supporting a large part of the national economy. The wild part is that people can still climb onto the open orcas and ride almost for free. But in return, they accept an unofficial trip where even one strong gust can turn the ride into real danger. When night falls, far from city lights, only the steady shaking of the train remains under a sky packed with stars, and that is when you truly feel how small a human being is in front of the desert. FCAB Railway, Chile and Bolivia. This journey feels like a trip to another planet where a stubborn steel train crawls across the driest land on Earth, and some parts have not seen rain for centuries. In a landscape that looks almost dead, the train still passes bright blue and deep red pools where thousands of flamingos gather like a miracle of life. Then come wide white salt fields, throwing back the blue sky, while far away, volcanoes stand still with thin lines of smoke that make the view feel calm and threatening at the same time. Built from 1873, FCAB became one of the highest railway systems in the world by climbing across the Andes at more than 13,100 feet above sea level. This line links the ports of Chile with the high plateau of Bolivia. So for many years, it has carried huge amounts of copper and lithium to the sea, like an economic lifeline that cannot be replaced. To move even more minerals without breaking that vital flow, the railway later went through a major rebuild to widen the track while the line kept working. Mala Rijeka Viaduct, Montenegro. Have you ever seen a train crawl across open air as if it were sliding on a thin steel thread caught between two walls of white rock? The wild part is that this bridge is only one piece of a railway, once seen as one of the most expensive and difficult in Europe, with a full line passing through 254 tunnels and crossing more than 435 bridges. It was built from 1969 to 1973. And it became the clearest symbol of a dream to connect the inland heart of the country with the coast by rail across brutal land. From far away, the bridge looks as thin as a thread, yet that fragile look is exactly what turns it into such a powerful symbol of people daring to carry a railway through a place that seemed impossible. Go take viaduct, Myanmar. Imagine yourself being held in the air by a steel monster more than 120 years old, a structure that once shocked the world when it opened as the largest trestle bridge of its time. Each time the train crosses, it has to slow to only about 3 to 6 miles per hour, turning a short crossing into a long and choking stretch of tension high above the ground. In that moment, the cold scream of metal and the shaking spreading through the train floor make everyone feel that this old bridge is straining to carry the full weight above it. At about 2,260 feet long, it once held a world record, and even now it still works every day in tropical weather like a living transport line that refuses to give in to time. The most frightening part is how open the bridge feels. Because from the train door, it can seem as if the car is flying above the treetops, with a drop of about 335 feet below. Those thin steel towers standing in empty space are what turn Go Take into a true test of nerves, even for the bravest people. Renzikao Railway Bridge, China. Like a giant steel skeleton trapped inside a mountain crack, this Y-shaped bridge has clung to the cliff for more than a century, and even now it is enough to make people shiver. In that compressed space, the sound of steel wheels keeps crashing back from both rock walls, creating a deep echo that feels as if the whole mountain is roaring in the dark. What makes it even more frightening is that the bridge often faces powerful swirling winds, so the thin structure seems to be testing its strength against the sky itself. Completed in 1908, the bridge stands about 328 feet high. With its two steel legs coming together and driving straight into the cliff instead of resting on supports in the fast river below. When the train enters the narrowest part of the valley, the feeling becomes very strange, as if the whole car is trying to squeeze through a gap so tight that the cliff is almost pressing against your body. It does more than connect the railway from the highlands toward the sea, because it has also become a place where stone, steel, wind, and abyss stand pressed together in a way that is hard to forget. Baipanjiang Railway Bridge, China. Like a giant steel arch splitting a deep abyss, this bridge sends the train out into the sky at a height of about 902 feet, where even one look down can make your chest tighten. Sometimes the clouds do not wrap around the bridge, but sit far below it, making the whole deck look like a steel island hanging above a white sea. Then, only seconds after crossing that windy open space, the train dives into thick fog or the dark face of the cliff, and the world in front of you almost vanishes at once. Completed in 2001, it held the world record as the highest railway bridge for 15 years, with a main span of about 774 feet, crossing the canyon without any support in the middle. Looking down from the cars, the river below shrinks into what seems like a thin green thread, and the empty space around you makes the train feel more like it is flying than rolling on rails low. That mix of extreme height, shifting cloud, and the feeling of hanging in open air is what makes Beipanjiang one of the most haunting railway sites in Asia. Landwasser Viaduct, Switzerland. In the middle of dark pine forest, this stone bridge appears like a slender curve, and the moment a red train glides onto it, the whole scene begins to look like a moving painting. In winter, snow covers the whole valley in white, while the red train stands out against grey stone and cold forest, making the landscape feel both quiet and strangely ghost-like. Shamsha. That feeling grows even stronger because the moment it leaves the windy open space, the train dives straight into a dark tunnel in the cliff, as if it has been swallowed in a second. Built from 1901 to 1902, the bridge rises about 213 feet, stands on 6 even stone arches, and after more than 120 years, its shape is still almost unchanged. Because the curve is so sharp, with a radius of only about 328 feet, people in the rear cars can see the front of the train seeming to hang above the deep gorge with almost no support in sight. That mix of height, curve, the red train, and the sudden jump into darkness is what makes Landwasser one of the most unforgettable railway sites in Europe. Daju Cliffside Train, China. Hanging on a sheer cliff, this one-of-a-kind train holds no more than 55 people for over an hour at a terrifying height of about 3,937 feet, enough to make anyone feel locked in the sky. Even so, the journey, exactly 8 miles long, still draws people, because in Eastern culture that number can suggest a promise of love that lasts a lifetime. But when the clouds roll in, the bright white train drives straight into a thick wall of fog, erasing the abyss below and turning the whole ride into a drifting white blur. The strange part is that the body looks like a sleek, high-speed train, yet instead of racing forward, it moves very slowly along the cliff edge, holding passengers longer between height and fear. Looking far out, you see quiet peaks, like an ancient ink painting, but the moment you look down, the valley opens like a dark funnel ready to swallow anything that loses balance. That is why, once the train begins to move, this place feels like a harsher version of a glass bridge, forcing you to finish the ride and face your fear all the way to the end. Grimsel Pass, Switzerland. Grimsel Pass appears as a cold granite planet, where the grey colour of rock completely overwhelms life. The haunting name Dead Lake reminds of 1799, when the icy lake bottom became a grave for hundreds of fallen soldiers. Humans challenged nature by erecting 2 dam walls 374 feet high, locking away billions of gallons of meltwater. Harshness peaks in winter when snow falls up to 30 feet thick, burying and completely erasing the road for months. However, the barren mountain interior hides a giant quartz crystal cave worth millions of dollars recently found. The darkest secret lies 1,500 feet underground, where scientists are testing how to bury nuclear waste forever. Scenic Railway Australia. Instead of simply going downhill, this train feels as if it drops you straight into the abyss at an angle of 52 degrees. So steep that many people feel their body is about to slide out of the seat. Right outside the windows, rusty rails pinned to the cliff rush past giant ferns, making the view feel like a piece of forest left behind from the age of dinosaurs. Then, as the train bursts out of the tunnel, a vast rainforest opens before you under a blue haze, a strange mist created by the oil of millions of eucalyptus trees. That is why the scenic railway feels like more than a thrill ride, because it also acts like a doorway, pulling you back into the old industrial age between rock, forest, and dizzying height. Dades Gorge Road, Morocco. Cutting across the fiery red heart of Morocco, Dades Gorge Road is a precarious stone ribbon clinging to vertical cliffs. The footprints of ancient camel caravans were once etched into this trail to transport salt and silk across the desert. Ancient clay castles rise from the rocks, appearing and disappearing in the characteristic burnt orange of the sun-drenched highlands. Two giant stone walls reaching 1,600 feet enclose the road, making every vehicle as tiny as grains of sand. Under the intense sun, car engines must scream as the machine temperature easily exceeds 230 degrees Fahrenheit amidst the rock maze. Right next to the parched hell is a lush green oasis with palm groves, creating a stunning visual contrast. Los Machucos, Spain. Los Machucos is a massive vertical concrete wall where asphalt cannot exist because the extreme slope would make it slide off the mountainside. The landscape is dominated by strange limestone blocks rising from green meadows, appearing and disappearing in the thick ocean mist. This inhuman route is famous worldwide for breaking the will and making even the most professional racers shed tears. For every 3 feet forward, you must climb 1 foot higher, turning this 31% grade journey into a battle against gravity. The true nightmare comes when going downhill, as brake pad temperatures skyrocket to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, causing brake fluid to boil and fail. Amidst the clouds, this barrier-free road looks like a fragile rope connecting the ground to the high sky. Hard Knot Pass, United Kingdom. Hard Knot Pass is truly a steep monster, the most brutal route challenging every driving limit in the United Kingdom. At the highest sections, the blind crest phenomenon causes drivers to see only the sky through the windshield and completely lose track of the road. The stench of burnt clutches often fills the air as engines collapse before the 33% grade. With an extreme 1:3 incline ratio, gravity seems to pull every vehicle toward the abyss with every mile. Psychological pressure peaks when you are forced to reverse on narrow cliffs just to yield to oncoming traffic. Overcoming the hardship, you will reach the ancient Roman fort ruins, a military legacy nearly 2,000 years old. Chapman's Peak Drive, South Africa. Ruling between vertical cliffs and the ocean, this route is a masterpiece where humans dare to challenge the harshness of nature. The height of insanity is the 500-foot half-tunnel section, jutting out into mid-air like a giant shark's jaw biting into the mountain. It is even more amazing to know that this entire asphalt strip was once manually carved by convicts hanging from the cliffs. With 114 rapid curves, you are forced to steer constantly every 250 feet to avoid flying off the deep blue abyss. The landscape becomes mystical when cloud waterfalls pour from the mountain peak onto the road, then vanish instantly upon touching the sea's warmth. Although this beauty turns the place into a stage for expensive supercars, every metre of the road is a gamble with death. White Rim Road, USA. Standing out in the red desert, White Rim Road is a 225 million year old white rock ledge dividing the cliffs into two separate worlds. This is a truly thirsty deadland where, along the way, you can absolutely not find any natural freshwater sources. The past here is full of violence, as bulldozers tore up the ground in the 1950s to hunt for radioactive uranium ore. The challenge set is a closed circle 100 miles long where you have no way back and are completely isolated from the outside world. Overwhelming feelings rise as the car drives suspended in the sky, 1,000 feet of abyss below and 1,500 feet of cliffs above. Today, only the 50 luckiest vehicles are permitted to enter each day to keep the fragile ecosystem from being crushed. Crown Range Road, New Zealand. Famous as the highest paved highway in New Zealand, this route forces drivers to perform breathtaking vertical climbs. The surreal beauty here is a trap, as countless drivers engrossed in the scenery have plummeted into the deep abyss after just a second of steering neglect. Pressure rises extremely high when you must steer through 7 sharp hairpin turns continuously, pressed closely together on the steep mountainside. The cruelty of the weather becomes clear as temperatures can plunge to 32 degrees Fahrenheit right in the middle of summer, laying out deadly invisible black ice puddles. Few expect this dangerous ribbon to originate from the 1860s, carved into the cliffs by desperate miners using picks and shovels to hunt for gold. Upon reaching the top of the bus, the view is engulfed only by giant grass rolling fiercely under the gale, exactly like a wild golden ocean. National Route 40 Argentina. Dubbed the backbone of the Andes, this wild avenue stretches across South America as the most brutal survival test. Terror lurks on hundreds of miles of jagged Ripio gravel roads, sharp as tens of thousands of saw teeth, waiting to tear up any tyres. In the open plains, crosswinds gusting at 100 miles per hour have enough power to blow away and flip over even heavy vehicles. So, spanning over 3,200 miles, this wicked road also forces you to climb to an altitude of 16,000 feet, where depleted oxygen robs the breath of life. You will be tossed between absurd climate extremes, travelling from freezing glaciers to the end of scorching deserts over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The chilling isolation in a completely silent space with no cell service easily drags drivers into the deadly trap of highway hypnosis. Spiti Valley Road, India. Perched precariously at 12,500 feet, Spiti Valley is a brutal natural boundary completely separating India and Tibet. Terror surrounds you when vehicles must crawl under jagged rock overhangs, hollowed out and hanging right above your head. Despite the treacherous terrain, countless ancient mud and stone monasteries still root themselves on sharp cliffs like flying fortresses. More disastrously, stray rocks from above can suddenly fall like sniper bullets, crushing car windows without any warning. Because the atmosphere is so thin, many drivers are forced to steer while hugging portable oxygen tanks to prevent deadly hallucinations. Along the way, violent storms have sculpted the mountainside into sharp stone pillars rising dryly like devil's hands tearing at the void. Furka Pass, Switzerland. Ruling at 7,969 feet in the Alps, Furka Pass is more than a road. It is the decider of Great River's fates. A single raindrop falling here might travel to the North Sea or the Mediterranean, making this peak a sacred continental divide. At the sharpest turn, An ancient hotel clings to the cliff, standing as proof of human audacity against nature's might. To save the blue ice cave from global warming, giant white blankets are used to cover the glacier every summer. Seen from above, this stone ribbon twists like a rope thrown into the abyss with hairpin curves that take your breath away. Just one moment of steering distraction is enough to turn a luxury journey into a free fall down the bottomless valley. Dempster Highway, Canada. Serving as the only Canadian artery reaching the Arctic Ocean, this gravel strip is a harsh test for every northern traveller. The sharp shale on the surface acts as a ruthless assassin, making shattered windshields a terrifying nightmare. To protect the underlying permafrost, the road floats on a gravel cushion up to 8 feet thick for absolute insulation. Its name recalls the death of a patrol team that froze in 1911, a warning from a bloody past. In winter, temperatures plunge to minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit, making metal brittle and freezing breath the moment it hits the ground. Drivers must use steel mesh to shield their glass to survive the rain of stones kicked up by oncoming traffic. Cerro de la Muerte, Costa Rica. Ruling at 11,322 feet, the most notorious pass of the Inter-American Highway is a brutal survival test in the heart of Costa Rica. Local drivers always follow a life and death rule to leave this mountain before 4 in the afternoon to avoid frost traps. At this accident black spot, thick cloud walls frequently reflect headlights back, causing trucks to easily plunge straight into the abyss. The name Mountain of Death marks a tragic past where hundreds of people remained forever after freezing on the steep trail. The landscape changes strangely as the jungle disappears, giving way to high mountain tundras with mossy shrubs twisted in the cold wind. Below the sharp switchbacks lies a giant mechanical graveyard with rusted vehicle wrecks scattered, proving the brutality of the bottomless abyss. Eshima Ohashi Bridge, Japan. This giant bridge in Japan is actually a spectacular deception designed to manipulate the psychology of millions of people. It is pushed into the sky like a 15-story building, solely to give way for massive cargo ships to pass underneath. Stretching about 1 mile across the lake, this is the greatest rigid frame concrete architectural block in the land of the rising sun. Although likened to a roller coaster with a 45-degree vertical concrete wall that is entirely a brain-tricking optical illusion. Ironically, the fatal danger here is not slipping backwards, but tourists suddenly braking hard to try and take pictures. Trader delle 52 Gallery, Italy. Hidden in the limestone mountains of Italy, this First World War military masterpiece is a bloody epic about human madness. At the jagged cliff openings, your life can be taken by extremely strong wind, gusts waiting to throw everything into the deep abyss. A suffocating feeling will instantly strike when crawling into dark rock cavities with ceilings under 7 feet, triggering extreme claustrophobia. This entire 4-mile underground maze of 52 tunnels is a terrifying construction record, carved entirely by hand in just 10 months. The experience gets even crazier in tunnel sections carved into a multi-loop spiral, piercing the mountain's core like a giant corkscrew to rapidly push the altitude. Walking through here is like moving through a giant cemetery, because every cold cliff is engraved with the names of the regiments that permanently remained on the battlefield. Trans-Amazonian Highway, Brazil. Cutting across the Amazon rainforest like a wound that never healed, this highway turns isolation into the greatest danger for anyone who travels it. Construction began in 1972 as part of a large-scale plan to settle and develop the interior Urshus, and it was once promoted as a national progress symbol. During 6 months of heavy rain, a central stretch of more than 250 miles sinks into red mud about 1 to more than 3 feet deep, trapping trucks for days or even weeks. The full route extends about 550 miles, dividing primary rainforest into separated blocks and disrupting natural wildlife movement. Its creation led to thousands of miles of uncontrolled side roads, accelerating illegal logging and deep forest resource extraction. By the late 1980s, many sections were abandoned, and decaying wooden bridges, together with illegal mining activity, turned the corridor into a shadow trade route. Patio Paolo Perdicaki Road, Greece. Hidden behind the peaceful and romantic facade of Europe, this dirt road in Greece is actually a scythe of death, concealing countless risks. A deadly European trap. Spanning about 15 miles of winding hills, this trap is completely devoid of safety barriers, streetlights or signs to protect vehicles from the abyss. A road without protection. The driving experience becomes even worse when the road surface is just a jagged patch of clay and crushed stone, making tyre traction almost zero. A slippery gravel path. The terror is pushed to the climax when thick, ghost-like fogs swoop down, choking the driver's visibility to under 16 feet. A blinding mountain fog. The vehicle's engine will be completely exhausted when struggling against steep inclines reaching 22%, enough to scorch the braking system black. An engine-destroying slope. The true nightmare strikes if you meet oncoming traffic, forcing one to reverse blindly along the crumbling edge of the cliff to find a yielding spot. A terrifying reverse maneuver. Kabul-Jalalabad Road, Afghanistan. Cutting through the Hindu Kush Mountains, this treacherous 40-mile route is a true arena of death between the harshness of nature and human recklessness. The terror spreads on the road as giant trucks always roar and speed like a storm, ready to force smaller vehicles to the very edge of the cliff. Despite being extremely deadly, this is the vital economic artery of a landlocked country, straining to carry 80% of the essential goods. Even more haunting is that at the bottom of the canyon exists a giant metal graveyard where thousands of rusted vehicle wrecks have lain scattered for decades. The trap becomes even more brutal when the summer heat scorches the road surface up to 122 degrees, constantly blowing out the tyres of overloaded vehicles. Countless passenger buses have been permanently swallowed by the fierce river, leaving authorities completely helpless and giving up on counting the fatalities. National Highway 22, India. Carved deeply into the majestic Himalayan slopes, India's National Highway 22 is a bloody epic about the limits of human endurance against nature. Shahadi Divils here. Showers of free-falling boulders plunging at speeds up to 62 miles per hour continuously rain down, ready to crush the steel shell of any vehicle. Looking through the window, you will see the tyres teetering right on the edge of a profound abyss, 1,969 to 3,281 feet deep, where a roaring glacial river waits to swallow everything. To carve out this path, hundreds of workers had to hang suspended by ropes on the cliff face and permanently lost their lives at the bottom of the ravine. The consequence of the mountain blasting is massive stone awnings protruding and hanging suspended right over the car roof, like a trap waiting to snap shut. The ultimate nightmare is when two oncoming vehicles meet and one must blindly reverse along the crumbling cliff edge to find an empty space to yield. Albano Pass, Georgia. Hanging on the boundary of life and death, this route winding through the Caucasus Mountains at an altitude of 9,350 to 9,414 feet brings an overwhelming challenge to anyone who dares to knock on its door. To pray for safety, drivers passing through here always have the habit of stopping to pour a glass of strong liquor onto the cold ground to transcend the ill-fated souls. Tor. This spiritual action stems from the obsession when they have to continuously pass by countless metal plaques planted near the cliff edge, marking where victims have plunged straight to the bottom of the valley. The lethality of the mountain is multiplied as these 43 miles of bumpy road are completely devoid of asphalt signs and have absolutely no barriers to protect the wheels. Even more harshly, nature cruelly buries this exclusive route under giant walls of snow for 8 full months every year. The most terrifying aspect is that if your vehicle slips amidst that desperate scenery, you'll be completely alone because this entire area is a dead zone with absolutely no cell phone signal.